So Amanda Waller hires Vibe because she's going to use him to defeat Flash by disconnecting him from the Speed Force. Completely underrated character.
Dude, fuck Vibe. He's just stupid. He's a lame character.
I'm not getting into this with you again.
No,
okay? He's a very strong guy.
He's underrated for a reason. Anyways, hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This week we are going to be talking about how to fix the comic industry.
No, we're not.
What?
We're hijacking this. This is done.
Okay, he thinks Saint Walker is underrated.
Fuck you, dude. Saint Walker is awesome, and he's highly underrated.
Chip is underrated.
Chip is better by far.
He's a squirrel.
Fuck your squirrel, dude. Saint Walker is a G's like
No. Okay, so Vibe is like one of the strongest people.
Now,
in the DC universe.
You know what?
Stop.
Okay, fuck it. We're not fixing the comic industry. I can't even fix this fucking podcast. You know what? Underrated stories. Let's go. Yeah, so we decided we were going to take a little break from fixing the comic industry because it seems to be that everything that we've been talking about lately has been working and happening in comics. So, as you can tell, Marvel and DC have been paying attention to our podcast. But anyway,
Clearly.
Yes. And plus, we've got a trivia night coming up tomorrow night, so we've actually been preparing for that. So we want to do something a little bit more fun, maybe get your guys' interest geared up for maybe some stories you've never read. So today what we're going to be doing is each of us has compiled a list of top 5 underrated DC comic arcs, or entire series. Either way, what we feel is just underrated. And as we found out, that it's hard to find underrated DC stories because
I wonder why.
Yeah, it seems like DC hardcore fans really know how to amp up their stories.
It's metal. Metal's the greatest.
Metal is life, bro.
Over. It's under.
But anyway, we're going to get straight into this thing, and I'm going to give my very first honorable mention, which is Superman's Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek and Stuart Immonen. Just wanted to throw that out there. It's a good little story. It's about basically kind of like Superman living in our world, but he's read the Superman comic books. He knows about the history, but then developed Superman-like powers and how Superman would kind of go about living in this real world. Really cool little story. It's something I would definitely recommend to anybody who doesn't like Superman and thinks it's kind of he's lame or he's too much of a Boy Scout. Good little read. My very first number 5 underrated story arc actually comes from Rebirth. It is Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, Volume 1, Sinestro's Law. Awesome little series, man. I mean, Robert Venditti and who is the artist on that? Sandoval. They did a great job. It's basically the Green Lanterns and the Yellow Lanterns have to come together and work together and basically form one core. And the way it all works out, and Venditti, as I've been saying, gives so much love to Guy Gardner and all these different characters. It finds a good balance between all 4 of the Earth Lanterns, even some of the yellow ones. Oh man, why am I blanking on her name? But Sinestro's daughter, I can't think of her name right now. She's great. Her relationship with Jon Stewart and Guy Gardner and everything happening there. Great series. Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps doesn't sell great here. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it here. And people need to probably keep in mind that if these are underrated, it's just kind of our experiences here at the shop or just in the area that we live in. So with me, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, only about 3 or 4 people pick up that book, and I think it's kind of criminal, especially as a Green Lantern fan. This is a great follow-up to Jeff Johns stuff. So my number 5, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, Volume 1, Sinestro's Law.
Well, my number 5 is an entire story. As Jake mentioned, some of these will be arcs and some of these will be entire runs. Mine is Hellblazer, the original Vertigo title. Hellblazer is a character, or John Constantine as he's labeled as now. He doesn't seem to get a lot of love. He's a character that a lot of people don't know of, and granted with the Justice League Dark movie and talks and back and forth, whatever.
Constantine had his own season 1, right?
In DC, yeah, he had half a season, and then he's on Legends of Tomorrow now, so he's getting a little bit of steam going there. Hellblazer is a perfect opportunity for anyone that's a fan of horror, supernatural, as well as superhero antics, because at times he does get involved with the likes of Batman, and then even in Trinity he was involved with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. So Hellblazer is an awesome character to get into, and I definitely recommend the Vertigo title to start with.
Nice. I would never peg you as a Hellblazer fan.
Right? Looks at his Facebook page.
Looks at his Comic-Con pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jake did an honorable mention. I'm going to do one. I didn't really put it on there because I didn't really feel like it was completely underrated, but here it is. I'm going to go with Green Arrow, Rebirth, Volume 1. It's the Death and Life of Oliver Queen. I've talked about it millions of times on here, so I'm not going to go in great detail about it, but it just deals with Oliver Queen.
He's pointing out the trade here in the shop.
Well, I'm also pointing out the creative team.
No, I can't read it from over here.
Ben Percy and Otto Schmidt.
All right, killed it, bro. Right here, give me next.
I got you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, but my number 5. The only reason why that one didn't make it on my list is because that one I don't know. I feel like it's not really underrated, but it's still I don't see it a lot. It doesn't move very much here. But my number 5 is Gotham by Midnight, Volume 1, We Do Not Sleep. It's written by Ray Fawkes and Ben Templesmith. It follows Jim Corrigan, and he's a detective. And pretty much what the story is, Ben Templesmith kills it on the art. It's very unconventional, so, I mean, don't expect, like, Jim Chung type art, but it just deals with the supernatural aspects. While Batman is controlling the street, keeping the streets clean and trying to fight off all those criminals, this is dealing with kind of like a BPR, like a PPRD type team that pretty much fights, supernatural monsters and ghosts. And the beginning of this all really deals with these kids that's gone missing, and there's like an exorcism. I don't want to go too much into it because there is a spoiler to it too, but it's really good. I know that it has a lot of some of the people give it bad ratings, but it's a nice little book, especially if you're really into supernatural stuff. I think the main thing that this book did not have going for it is it says Gotham in the title, and there's no Batman.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah.
Templesmith has a very distinct artistic style, so
that too.
Something like that his art would probably
if it was
suitable.
Yeah, if it was Image or Dark Horse that this book was published under, I bet money it would probably be even bigger. But it's just, people expect, and when you're a DC person, you're expecting a certain kind of art style. You're expecting Batman.
Yeah,
at
you hear
least.
Gotham, you think Batman. It's kind of like when you, watch Batman Assault on Arkham, and you're been the old bait and switch. It's a Suicide Squad movie.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
This is Harley Quinn and Deathstroke.
It's Batman. Okay, well, my number 4 is the New 52 Aquaman by Jeff Johns, specifically the first 3 volumes, The Trench, The Others, and Throne of Atlantis. Now, this is a book. Now, I've read Aquaman. I've been introduced to Aquaman. I've got plenty of history with Aquaman, more so the animated versions than anything else. But he became the butt of the joke a lot of times when it came to the Justice League. So then Jeff Johns gets his hands on Aquaman and just completely reinvents his character to make him somebody who can go toe-to-toe with Superman. He's a legit king, but he also does a good job of balancing his life as an Atlantean and his life as an Earthbound or just human. And the way that weighs on him. And the good thing that I like about it too is that they don't really shy away from the jokes. They acknowledge the jokes about being able to talk to fish and all that other shit, and they find a way to sidestep it all smartly and make Aquaman just a total badass. And The Trench is probably one of the greatest things I've ever read. It talks about, because when I think about the ocean, I think about all of these undiscovered creatures and species that live beneath there. And Jeff Johns finds a way to just flesh these things out and make them truly terrifying, scary, disgusting, and a true threat to Aquaman. And again, when you realize Aquaman can go toe-to-toe with Superman, and these things are a threat, not just to Aquaman, but the entire, just Atlantis in general, it makes for a really fun read. And then, you get, in The Others, you get a lot of Black Manta. Throne of Atlantis is a battle with Orm, so it's just a really good, almost Game of Thrones type story with Aquaman. And to me, it cements this dude is an A-lister, and he should be an A-lister, which also kind of gets me to I'm not so excited for the Jason Momoa Aquaman movie, specifically because I love this run so much.
But it seems like they're going to be dealing with some of the Trench.
I think with James Wan at the helm, they probably will, but again, just Jason Momoa is not my idea of Aquaman,
Yeah.
So that's whatever.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
Aquaman 52 or Aquaman and Jabberjaw?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go Aquaman New 52 though, by a slight margin. Yeah, but I will say that the Aquaman Rebirth by Dan Abnett is a great follow-up to New 52 as well. So if you end up liking Aquaman New 52, Aquaman Rebirth will be right up your alley.
You've been preaching it for a while. I think I'm gonna have to.
It's
give it a
really
read.
damn good, and the art in it is beautiful. But all right, Dallas, you're number 4.
My number 4 is actually in the New 52 as well. It's the end of the New 52 with Justice League Darkseid War, which was Justice League number 40 all the way through 50, and then a few number 1 tie-ins with Batman and Shazam or Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman.
Wasn't
the
there
whole
even
roster.
like a Justice League Dark tie into that?
I'm sure there was. They did a lot of tie-ins with it.
Justice League Dark Side.
Yeah, Darkseid. The creative team on this was Jeff Johns, McGuire, Jim Lee, Williams, Anderson, and Sinclair. This one, the reason I chose this one wasn't actually because of the story necessarily, but the highlights it gave to specific characters. They all inhabit abilities of gods. I'm trying to avoid spoilers in some of these because we're trying to promote you to come in and get some of these. So one of my favorite characters to read is Billy Batson, Captain Marvel, Shazam as of recently. And he really gets highlighted in this series as one of the gods. He gets these godlike abilities, whereas most of the time he kind of just seems like the kid on the playground that when he's there, when he's not, it's no big deal. Whereas in this one, he actually played a key role in this and he got new abilities of new gods, and it was very interesting to break down the acronym again of Shazam into different characters, and the redesign on his suit was amazing. The Barry Allen storyline was also interesting to me too. What was it? The Flash of Death.
It's been a couple years since I read this. I can't remember.
I can't remember his name, but it was interesting. He was basically outrunning himself from death. And I mean, that's what Barry does best, is speed and running. So it was using him.
Or complain about how he's never fast enough.
Well, that's a TV show.
Or
But,
I'm not fast enough.
Batman was interesting, but that's where a lot of the fanboys come in. The God of Knowledge, and he knows everything, and that's where we get.
Isn't that when he gets on Omac's chair, whatever it is,
Yes,
during the Dark Side Warrior?
And that's where we get posed the question that never got answered. There's 3 Jokers, because he asks who's the identity. So it poses questions that still haven't been answered, but it's a storyline that poses questions that makes you want to continue reading. Granted, those answers haven't come about, but it still posed the questions to make me keep reading.
They also introduced Darkseid's daughter. Well, they didn't introduce her, but she became a main player. And then also he had a son, right? That was part Amazonian in that as well?
Yes. No.
Or was that the daughter?
That was her. She
okay,
was part Amazonian.
I remember the baby stuff very vividly.
They briefly touch on Wonder Woman's origin with her origin, Grail.
Yeah,
they touch
Grail,
on her origin briefly with it because they're so closely linked, which I didn't know until I read that, and I don't know if that was a retcon and redesign.
Pretty sure it's a retcon.
But it was interesting when they go back and redevelop characters that don't have this development.
I think that's where Bendis's first influence on DC was, like retcon Grail.
I thought you were going to be saying that. But I would recommend it. It's a great read. Specifically, like I said, Shazam or Captain Marvel is the highlight for that. Now, Josh, your number 4.
My number 4 is Green Arrow Quiver. It's written by Kevin Smith, and the art is done by Phil Hester. Phil Hester I love his artwork. It's kind of has like this 90s cartoon feel to it. But this whole story follows Green Arrow died. Spoilers. He died. I know, right? He is resurrected in this.
Wow, another spoiler.
I know, right? He's resurrected in this by Hal Jordan.
I was say I remember
who is now the Spectre.
Yeah.
And he brings him back, but what he does is he brings him back where he only remembers up to, I think it was like at the end of Hard Traveling Hero. So in his head, he's still like in that time period, and he doesn't know anything that happened to him afterwards. But even his body is cured of there's no scars from any of the last few, all these other issues that happened in between. I don't want to go through the whole history of Green Arrow just to tell you this, but he just doesn't remember a huge chunk of his life. And there's also this like investigation that's going on during this. There's these kids that are being kidnapped and that are missing, and it's really kind of like, it's dark, but with Phil Hester's artwork to it, it kind of brings a light tone to it. And also with Green Arrow, you also kind of get that light tone to it, that Robin Hood like-esque. And then with where his mindset is, it's still in that like late 1970s kind of Green Arrow with traveling around with Hal.
Yeah.
But it's a great story. I do suggest picking it up, especially if you're kind of intrigued by Kevin Smith's comic book writing. He has wrote some stuff, and I do think this is probably one of my favorite Kevin Smith comics.
What I found interesting about that book was like how small the ending actually felt when they finally take down, the bad guy of that book. It was like down in like a basement or something. I thought that was like, what an interesting way to end this.
Well, see, and that's one thing I like about Green Arrow, and that's the way I like my Green Arrow, is everything kind of being like a small, condensed thing. I don't want to see Green Arrow going out, saving the world. I like him just kind of staying close to home. I think that's the best kind of Green Arrow, is when he's just mostly focused on his city, his home, his people, that kind of deal.
Yeah. All right, well, on to number 3. My number 3 is Justice by Paul Dini and Alex Ross. Now, that should get any fan excited to know that Alex Ross illustrated an entire series. So I think there was 5 or 6 issues. I can't remember specifically, but there's one issue dedicated solely to Superman, one issue dedicated solely to Wonder Woman, one issue dedicated solely to Shazam. There's a Justice League, and I think an Elongated Man. I can't remember. There's another one. Maybe it's the Atom. Can't remember off the top of my head, but like the Superman, Shazam, and Wonder Woman issues really, really stuck out to me, especially the Shazam one. I mean, Paul Dini has a great knack for just writing these characters and making them real characters. If anyone recognizes the name Paul Dini, it's probably from the Batman animated series. And this guy just nails Shazam at being this kid who's actually playing hero, but he is a hero, and you get some backstory about the Wizard Shazam, and I guess I should say this is called Captain Marvel at the time. And he's going in and he's playing with orphan kids in a hospital and stuff, and he's trying to show them around. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go do my superhero stuff around the world. Do you guys want to come kind of check it out? And how he needs to kind of learn about responsibility, because he's not just a kid, he's also a hero, and he needs to be able to look out. Wonder Woman, it's about her kind of coming from Amazon and trying to be acclimated with the rest of the world. And there's a great interaction between Superman and Wonder Woman where Superman kind of has to tutor Wonder Woman a bit and like, hey, this is kind of how you have to deal with humans. You know, we are not human, and we can't just fly above them all day and look down on them. Like, we have to acclimate and be one of them, live among them. We have to understand why they're such a great species is because they're so flawed. But, you know, Paul Dini puts it much more eloquently than I do. And then Superman's, of course, is about, I mean, you've got the power to basically do anything and fix the entire world, and explains why he can't do that. Realistically, why he just can't meddle in the affairs of the world and politics and stuff like that. And, of course, it's all accentuated by Alex Ross's art. And we actually had a giant hardcover in here with the slipcase, and I had it in here for months, and I was so sick of not seeing that thing move, I actually bought it myself and took it home. And I absolutely love it.
It's not a cheap book either.
It's a $75 book.
But it's a beautiful, like, if you're gonna buy that, like, that is the best way to buy it.
It's a huge book. I mean, I'm not talking about huge as in like it's a great book. It's physically a big ass book, but when you get to sit there and read it, yeah, coffee table book is a good way to put it. But when you get to sit and read it, and it's just nothing but Alex Ross art after Alex Ross art, and on every page, I mean, it's a pleasure to read. And it's just something that I think if you want to delve into the mindset of some of these characters, I wish I could remember right off the top of my head who some of the other issues were dedicated towards. It is an absolute must-read for anybody who's a fan of these bigger characters, of the golden age heroes of DC. So
I feel like anytime you get Alex Ross's artwork, you kind of lose track of the story, not because the story's bad, just because you get so into the artwork.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but it's really hard to do because Paul Dini, man, when he's killing it, he's killing it.
When that guy's on it, he's fucking on it.
He knows how to tap into and hit your heartstrings.
Oh, yeah, he does.
Well, swinging off of that one, you mentioned Captain Marvel and Shazam. Yep. I'm glad you mentioned that, because my number 3 is Shazam, the Monster Society of Evil by Jeff Smith. Now, this one I feel like a lot of people don't gravitate towards only because of the artwork in it. It's very kid-like, but I feel like that attributes and benefits with Billy Batson, because he is just a kid. So when you read it, you get this kid-like sensation when you read it, not only in the artwork, but the storytelling. It's phenomenal. It's really, I don't want to say cheesy, because it's not quite cheesy. Kid-like, I guess, the best way to put it. It's very lighthearted, but there's, I might be pronouncing some of the names incorrectly. Dr. Savannah is working with Mr. Mind, who is an intergalactic being, and he brings his robots to Earth, and he's working with him secretly. Now, that's not quite a spoiler, because it's revealed pretty early on, but secretly. And, of course, you've got some of the Marvel family. You've got Talkie Tawny, the tiger, and then you've got Mary Marvel. She's in it as well. But you get this brief origin touch story on Billy Batson, so you get to understand he's an orphan, and you see where he's living, and it's this rundown, abandoned house, and he's just on his own scrapping for food, and he's got Talkie Tawny with him, and he's, like, kind of coaching him and helping him out when he can. And it was a nice introduction for me, and this is actually the one that kicked me off into like trying to go back and read some of Shazam or Captain Marvel. And I think it was because it was so different from what I'm used to reading. So I read Batman Beyond and Batman primarily, and these are these dark, grittier, more adult storylines typically, and this one's so childlike and freeing, and it reminded me of reading Spider-Man at times. So it was more relatable for me. So that's why I recommend it. If you're into more relatable characters, I feel like Billy Batson is a perfect opportunity for your childlike inner person that we all kind of have. Being in the comic industry and community, we all have like a childlike portion of us. We see Spider-Man and we get all giddy. So that's why I recommend this one. Pick it up. Great book.
Yeah, I honestly, Jeff Johns even wrote I think 4-issue thing for New 52 Shazam, and I think that's actually where they first started calling him Shazam, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I heard Bendis was coming to DC, I was so hoping he was going to be put on Shazam.
I know you were hyping me up for it, and I was like, man, that sounds great.
That's a great team. But Shazam is actually the only DC movie right now that I'm cautiously optimistic for. But yeah, that's something I haven't read. I read Superman Shazam First Thunder, which is actually a good read that I'd recommend to someone too. Not on my list, but anyway.
All right, on to Josh. Y'all missed me, I know. All right, so my number 3 is White Knight, written and artwork done by Sean Murphy. It's 8 parts. This is like Elseworlds tale. In this world, Joker is Jack Napier, and he gets cured of his insane mental issue. I'm just going to sum it down to that. And he starts deciding that what he's going to do is start turning Gotham against Batman, but he's also trying to cleanse Gotham. He thinks that now that he's cured, he can actually be a better hero than Batman ever was because of all the destruction that Batman has caused, and also all the corruption with the Gotham City Police Department. But the artwork's great on it. The storyline is awesome. It's definitely kind of makes you sit there and wonder. The only problem I have with this book is I wish it was a little bit more. I wish it was canon. I feel like it would definitely be more impactful if it was canon. This is definitely there's all these little hints throughout the whole thing that this is not going on in the normal universe of DC universe that we know. But if you like Joker and you like a dark, gritty Batman, this is definitely the book for you. It's great.
Yeah. White Knights is a good read. I wish my one complaint with it maybe is that it's a little too short. I wouldn't have minded had it gone 2, 3, 4 more issues, flesh out some of the ideas that they were touching on. But no, it is a great little series. Joker kind of using the law on with him on his side to take down Batman and having all these legitimate reasons why legally Batman should be taken in. It's a great angle.
I
for
also
Joker to
like
play.
the fact that they explain, like, because a lot of the people out there that are like slight Harley fans. You always remember your Harley, right, from like the 90s going on, and then all of a sudden they started transitioning Harley into what we've seen in Suicide Squad. And that Harley is definitely way different than the Harley that we're used to, and it's way more annoying. And then this, they address it. They say there's 2 Harleys.
You didn't have to say that. You could just they addressed it.
It doesn't spoil anything. That happens like within like the first 2 issues.
I know.
Well, then I have a question for both of you. I know sometimes when story arcs come out and they're really popular, sometimes they'll come out with a volume 2 or a set 2 or whatever you want to call it. Would you be upset if they came out with a set 2 and continued the story? Or do you feel like 2 or 3 issues would have been only thing that they could have added to and leave it alone at that?
I think that's it. I think you add 2 or 3, 4 issues to this and you leave it alone. You never touch it again.
Add a second volume to it of another 8 or 5 to 8 issues. You would beat it to the
It'd be
the
like
ground.
The Dark Knight Returns and the Dark Knight Returns Last
That's what
Crusade.
I was-
It would just be way too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just needed us a little bit more, just to kind of flesh it out.
I concur. All right, my number 2. It's another Paul Dini series, actually.
Whoa.
It's called Dark Knight, A True Batman Story. And this is actually the true story of how Paul Dini was once mugged and had the shit kicked out of him. Like, when I heard about it, I didn't think it was a big deal until I read it, and he gives a lot of detail about how he got the shit kicked out of him over on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood one night when he was working on Batman the Animated Series back in the 90s. And how he just had all this PTSD and all this stress and all these other conditions that were just plaguing him. And, it touches a lot on what he was doing for Warner Brothers at the time, what he was doing for Batman the Animated Series, what was going on in his personal life, how it affected his love life, how it affected his personal life, how it affected his work life, and how he was just afraid to come out and do anything anymore because the guy was never caught. Just everything he was dealing with physically, all the stuff that he had to go through for the hospital. And he finds a way to intelligently weave Batman and the Joker and all these other classic Batman characters into this story, but not so much that they're actually living beings, but they're a part of his psyche. And he's sitting there like, in the book, he's like kind of, fuck you, Batman. Like, if you were real, this wouldn't have happened. But because you're not real, like, I got the shit kicked out of me. So fuck you. Like, I've spent my life and my, just tears and blood and everything, just trying to make sure you were alive in kids' lives and in their minds. But here I am getting the shit kicked out of me to the point where I was on the brink of death, and you weren't there for me. And then Joker, Poison Ivy, Penguin, these kinds of characters come in and out and kind of torture him in his mind. And I gotta tell you, this story, when I heard about the premise of this story, I was not interested, not in the slightest. But then a friend of mine told me to check it out, and I did, and I couldn't put this thing down. I read it cover to cover, and my God, did I feel like I could relate to this guy on so many levels, and I had chills, or a couple times I felt like I got choked up a bit reading this book. It's a phenomenal story, and if you're interested in something that's maybe not so comic booky, but you're interested in something that's got some comic book elements, but it's kind of more of a biography type thing, this is right there up your alley. And if you're a fan of the Batman the Animated Series, there are so many references to that show and the episodes and stuff he was working on at the time that he just either couldn't finish or he was, that inspired him because of this. It's a really great book.
I'm gonna have to jump in there real quick. I'm gonna jump in there real quick, because my number 2 is also Dark Knight's true Batman story. I agree 100%. I actually got into this book because I came into the shop one day and Jake's like, "Hey, we got this book and you need to get it, buy it now." Granted, he does that to everybody, but
bullshit.
But no, he pushed it on me, and then I was like,
He literally pushed it on him.
Literally pushed it on my body. Yeah, I couldn't control myself, and I bathed in the shower.
Can
for
you
hours.
get on with it?
So I went ahead and bought it because the premise of it just sounded awful. Like, not awful, but I'm like, I like Paul Dini, but I'm like, I don't want to read a comic book autobiography about this dude, And he starts talking about it, and the way that he was talking about it, there's just so much passion there. And I was like, okay, with this much passion, I gotta get it. So I went ahead and just bought it. I didn't read it first and then buy it. I went ahead and just bought it, read it that night, and I couldn't put it down. And it grabbed me right from the beginning, because in the beginning he talks about his childhood and about this whole, like, whenever he was lonely or whenever kids would pick on him at school and everything, that he would always have, these characters that would keep him company and help him through these issues.
And he would draw them out.
And he would see them in a way, and I just really relate to that. I was just like, wow, so somebody else was that same way, and it just really, and then it gets, like, you go further on and you find out, like, about his love life, and, like, his love life at that point, like, it choked me up, because I was like, I have been there. I have been right there, and I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
And it's really good, and it just really kind of speaks to your inner nerd. Because, like, that's what it essentially is, right?
Well, there's just something very human about this.
Oh, yeah.
It's not so fantastical that you're like, oh, it's Batman, I'm reading a Batman story. It's like, I'm reading about somebody who's literally he's kind of pouring his soul out in this book, and I almost have this really weird, invasive, voyeuristic view of it, but at the same time, you feel a kinship with him. Like, you feel uncomfortable because you can relate so heavily to what he's talking about. And I forgot all about the childhood stuff, but yes, goddamn it, yes.
That stuff,
I was right there with
it. Hit me. It hit me way too.
I think I need to read this.
You do.
You
as
want
a
to borrow
Batman
it?
fan,
Yes.
I'll bring it in, and then you can read it.
all right, as a Batman fan, I definitely say read
definitely.
it.
But go ahead and go for your 2.
My number 2, I don't have this passion and connection with, so it might be a little stale for the listeners. This one's one that I've noticed no one has heard of. The reason I actually got turned on to this was Hastings used to be a store here in Richmond, and they had comics and figures and games and whatnot. And my dad had actually bought some comics, and this was one of them. And he had read through it, and he gave them to me, and he was like, "I don't want these comics anymore. You can read them." And this character, something about the cover, it just grabbed me. It's this man on the front cover in a trench coat and a striped sweater, and his mask or his face looks stitched together with long black hair. And I was like, "This looks very horror-esque. What is this?" And you go through and you read it, and you don't know anything about the character because he doesn't know anything about himself. He wakes up, he has amnesia, he doesn't know who he is, where he's at. You find out he's in a part of Gotham called the Village. And he is basically a combination of Batman and the Punisher in terms of his vigilantism and his brutality. So he uses a piano wire as his weapon. So there's a lot of gruesome, bloody, like heads being cut off and decapitated. And basically his entire story arc is trying to find out who he is, how he got to be this way. And without giving you too much of the story, you can tell by looking into some of the artwork, he's actually multiple parts of different people, so kind of like Frankenstein. So he doesn't know who he is, and he finds out that he's multiple different people. And the thing about him, while he did have abilities, he had like super reflexes and a little bit of super strength. He wasn't picking up cars and throwing them, but he had above average super strength and speed and reflexes. He had this like very childlike innocence to him. He didn't understand anything until he found out who he was, and then he really started to mature as a character.
And what's the title of this book?
This is Simon Dark, and I forgot to mention the creative team. The writer is Steve Niles, and the artist is Scott Hampton. This is a very hard one to find. I still don't have all of the issues. It is in a trade, so that can be ordered. However, the individual issues are very hard to find.
Well, I've never heard of it. You brought it up to me, but I've never heard of it. You never really explained the premise to me. That does sound interesting, but sorry if I asked you, what the title is, but I realized you didn't say it at the beginning, so.
I didn't.
No,
I
you
said
didn't.
Simon
How
Dark.
old were you again when you got this book?
13, 14-ish.
And your dad was just buying you books of guys.
Well, it was more like he
decapitating
bought
other
like
dudes
a
with
large
piano
amount,
wire.
and then he had his old comics, and he's like, take this. So that's when I got to like read some older Spider-Man and Batman and Spawn, characters like that.
If you just ever need to talk to somebody, I'm here.
Well, that's what we're doing right now, talking.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Josh, do you want to go with your number one since I kind of skipped over you for your number two? Or do you want
No,
me to
you
go?
go ahead and go with your
All
number
right,
one.
my number one.
'Cause I know you're going to want to talk
Drum
during my
roll,
number one.
please.
Yeah, all right. Well, my number one is one that I don't think anyone's really going to see coming. I don't think many people think of this as DC, but it was printed under the DC label. And this is a book that I can only describe as having no right to be as good as it is. This is The Flintstones by Mark Russell and Steve Pugh.
You laugh, boy, but you
I know,
shut up and
I know.
listen.
I forgot this was on your list,
Yeah.
but I wasn't expecting it to be number one. So go
Yabba
ahead.
dabba. Fuck you, dude.
I'm telling you, man, this Flintstones book had no right to be as good as it was. When someone says, "Oh yeah, DC put out a Flintstones book," I can easily see someone shrugging this book off. And I had a customer come in sometime last year and was like, "You need to check this out." I said, "Okay, fine." And I breezed through this entire thing, and my God, dude, I love it. And the reason it's my number one is because it is so underrated. Nobody's read this. Nobody talks about this book. But fucking shit, is this an awesome book. So what it does is it basically takes Flintstones, of course, in the prehistoric era, basically, living alongside dinosaurs. You're welcome, Christians.
God doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's being very historically accurate, obviously. So, anyway, it's taking the Flintstones, and they're this like newly developed human tribe, and they're trying to figure out how to go about being a civilized society. And all the things plaguing their society is all the shit that's going on now, and it's not an accident. It's an allegory for the world that we live in now. So they're dealing with things like, who do we pray to? How do we distribute the wealth? How do we deal with border patrol or our neighbors and stuff to the north and south and shit like that. And
upper class and lower class.
Yeah, I mean it's just unreal, and how smart
yeah.
Bam Bam and what's the daughter Pebbles. How smart they are, and it's just unreal how good this book is. And I'm so sad that it ended at 12 issues. I really hope they bring it back and do a sequel. I hope this team gets back together. This guy Mark Russell, man, I'd love to see him on some other stuff and see what he can do. But the Flintstones from DC, I can't believe I'm saying this, is the most underrated DC series I've ever read.
You said it was probably one of your top books of last year, didn't you?
Oh, it absolutely was.
Yeah, you turned me on to it, and it's grabbed me in that first issue. I remember I came in here, and you were like, dude, you need to read Flintstones. I'm like, no, I fucking don't.
Yeah.
like, no. And I tell you this, man, I love it more than I love Flintstone vitamins.
Yeah, no shit, dude.
I forgot all about those. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
I take an issue of this over that vitamin every day if I
Yeah,
could.
oh yeah.
Now, question: when did that one come out?
I think it started in early 2017. If
That's what I
not,
thought the
if not,
recent-
it was late 2016 because
Okay.
it ended. That was 12 issues, so it was probably started in 2016. But
Now, do you
fuck.
guys know, was that the first DC Flintstones title, or was there one before that?
I don't know if there was another one. I assume there probably was because Warner Brothers, Hanna-Barbera,
Right.
all that stuff. But
By
this
this
specific
team.
series,
Yeah, and this storytelling.
I
Unreal.
think you said a lot of people shrug it off. I was one of those people.
Yeah,
I
and
like-
I don't blame anybody for shrugging off a series that someone's like, hey, read the Flintstones. Like, fuck you. What do you want me to read Scooby-Doo and Casper next? Like, no. But no, Flintstones is definitely an adult story. Like, this is an adult version of the Flintstones, and even the art is not like your comic or
Yeah.
your cartoon Flintstones. This is a very different version of Fred, Barney, Wilma, and all that.
Flintstones that you can relate to. Like, that's the other thing, too. You can actually, like, go, you know what, man, I've been where Fred's been.
But
you
the
didn't
thing is, like-
relate to him on the TV show?
No.
Man, what is
Yabba
wrong
dabba
with you?
no.
I mean,
Right.
I do. I feel like sometimes I do have a friend that's kind of stupider and, have blonde hair, but I really
one
don't.
thing that they do too is that, like, you know how they always use animals for household things, like, hey, this is my vacuum, it's an elephant, like all those animals and stuff. Like, you even see their problems and troubles too, and you feel bad for them. You're like, Jesus, these things are slaves. That's basically what they are.
the thing is like, just be careful, because a lot of those, like, not don't be careful, but like, if you see Hanna-Barbera on a DC comic, you might as well just go ahead and grab
Yeah,
it.
don't write it off. I'm
Because
telling
like
you.
the Hanna-Barbera DC crossover books that just came out not too long ago were great. Scooby Apocalypse is actually really good.
Yeah.
The Jetsons, I haven't read too much of it, but what I have read I've liked, and I know that Jake loves it.
Yep.
I mean, like,
Well, they
they're
also did
actually
like the
killing it.
Batman Elmer Fudd stuff. It's just
Yeah,
like
those
that
sold
stuff.
out, like,
That stuff
everywhere.
was so good. So if you guys see these kind of amalgamation or weird team ups between DC and like classic, cartoon characters, don't write them off. I'm telling you, there's something very special going on with these books.
Now that we're done talking about your number one,
All right.
my number one is the Amalgam universe that Josh left. No, I'm just kidding. You said Amalgam, so that's what I was.
God damn it.
Sorry, Josh. So my number
I was
one.
halfway tempted.
My number one's no surprise to people that know me. I'm a Batman Beyond fan. That's one of my favorite characters just because, again, I like my comic characters relatable.
I would never peg him as a Batman Beyond fan.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
either.
I know. Just look at my avatar. It's not even Batman Beyond.
Batman Beyond doesn't wear backwards.
I
in his
know.
Like
cap.
some
right.
half Asian dude. And
I
then,
know. Anyways,
Oh, God.
So this one is Batman Beyond Hush Beyond, and the creative team on this is Adam Breachin, Ryan Benjamin, and John Stanisi. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. This one follows the formula that the TV show closely followed. You get some new original villains, but you also get returning Batman villains, classic ones. So as the title suggests, you get Hush Beyond. So this new Hush person shows up. Terry doesn't know who he is, but Bruce automatically knows who he is, and he's like basically playing the sheltering guardian that he kind of does in the TV show and the comics. Like, hey, get out of that situation. You can't handle it. It's too much for you. And you also get some new adaptations of old characters. So you get a new Catwoman. So it's a Catwoman Beyond. So that's interesting. She has an interesting look. I'm not sure that I was super pumped
Does she
about
look
that.
like a married woman?
No.
Okay.
No.
Like she
I
doesn't
wouldn't-
look like she can't fit into her wedding dress 25 years down the road?
No.
way to
I think
contribute to
no.
the conversation.
Thank you. The story to me, I mean, first off, the cover was phenomenal. I truly loved it. The over-detailed Batman Beyond's usually drawn very simplistic and slick and straightforward, whereas this one, they actually gave him definition. So the cover on it's beautiful.
I always like the way that they draw Batman Beyond
Oh,
in
yeah.
the comics.
This one really stood out to me. The actual inner art is more traditional with a little bit of detail, but the comic cover itself. Now this was, I should mention, it's Batman Beyond Volume 3, Issues 1 through 6. So it's Volume 3. I had a blast reading it. I think I got it at Hastings years ago, and it was one of those, I never found Batman Beyond comics, and I was like, holy crap, this is a trade. And I flipped through it, and you guys were talking literally that night, cover to cover, read through it, read it again, and it's just a phenomenal read for any Batman Beyond fans. So I will leave it
Or
off
maybe
at
even
that.
just a Batman fan
Even a
who's
Batman
looking for
fan,
something new to
'cause
read.
You do get introduction of a new villain that was huge, had a huge in Batman Hush. Really bumped up popularity of new villains, and this one kind of harkens back to it.
Is Bruce Eastwood still in this?
Bruce.
Yeah, he's still on this one.
Bulletproof vest! Genius! Back to the Future reference, sorry. I just saw this first thing popped in my head when he said Eastwood.
Anyways, it's a good read. I would highly recommend it.
All right.
All
And
right.
Josh, you're numero uno.
My numero uno, I know that Jake's also going to kind of hijack it in parts, and you know what?
I'm
Go
gonna
for it,
hijack
because he will be able to go in detail about this a lot more than I will, because I'm going to get really excited about it. Me and him actually kind of like fought for our number one here, because I kind of stole it from him.
They literally fought in the shop, and I got to record it. So if you want to see that, that'll be the next
Yeah, we'll
podcast.
post that up at the end of the video.
It was pretty embarrassing. That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, so my numero uno is Identity Crisis, written by Brad Meltzer.
Rags Morales.
And Rags. It's 7 issues long. This
7 inches long. It's very respectable.
Oh, it's a mostly elongated man in this, so
It's
it
slightly
can be
to
as
the-
long as he wants
Yeah,
it.
it's true.
Slightly to the left or right?
It's slightly wherever the fuck he wants.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, right now though,
You can use a jump rope.
I'm kind of tucking it up into the waistband.
interesting.
It kind of makes it. It's a little comfortable.
This is the old after hours days. I missed this.
I know. Kind of just rubs up against it kind of nicely. You know,
Josh missed this too.
I did too. I just like I don't get to talk about.
Will you
penises a
talk
lot.
about Identity Crisis for fuck's sake?
Okay, so I don't know if I'm a man or a female. Oh, wrong Identity Crisis. Okay, so Identity Crisis follows elongated man Sue Dibney. I knew I was going to say it wrong. She's found murdered, and it shakes the whole Justice League. And it's really crazy because she's just, a human. She doesn't like have any powers. She's not a superhuman or nothing. But it's still, it just shows you how somebody like that could still affect the whole team. And they are all trying. It's this big, huge murder mystery, and you're finding out there's a lot of dark secrets hidden between the Justice League members. They're all supposed to be heroes. And while this is all going on, there's also other murders that are popping up, and you have separate teams trying to figure out and solve this mystery. And it is the best storyline I've ever read. It is definitely top up there.
Top up there.
It's top up there.
It's the best,
Top
but it's
up
top
there.
up there.
Top
I mean,
up there.
I knew this was gonna happen. I get excited about something, and then I just like, I did this book on my.
Put your foot in your mouth.
Yeah, I would not know about this book if it wasn't for Jake. I gotta thank him because he told me about it, and I was like, I always thought that cover kind of looked cool, but I never read it because I really don't care about DC all that much.
It sounds like you owe a lot of these to him.
I do.
He has called me the king of recommendations. But no, Identity Crisis, no joke. It is an incredible read. Now this series gets a lot of flack. You know, there's a lot of people who like to push back against this because there are certain elements in this book that people think should not be dealt with in comic books. It's just too adult. It's too real. It's just like, hey, my comic book reading is kind of a form of escapism, and I don't want to deal with this kind of shit in my reading. Well, you know what? That's your prerogative. But there are others of us that like to see these characters taking on real world problems. And you know, it's a showcase, and it showcases the fact that if you guys actually go back on this channel, you'll find a couple years ago I did a solo review before I actually met the two of you guys of Identity Crisis, and it's just me, no background music, nothing. It's actually kind of awkward to listen to for me anyway, but.
What he means is he's always known us. We've always been in his heart.
Yes. So
he knew in the review. You'll hear him say, "One day I'm going to pass this on to a fat man named Josh, and he's going to put it as his #1 underrated DC story."
Anyways, so this book deals with a lot of things that you're not going to find in most of your other traditional comic books, but there's also no surprise that Brad Meltzer is also a novelist. Like, he writes novels. So comic books is I don't think this was his first foray into comic books, but I think this is definitely earlier on for him, I believe. Anyway, the way that this goes on, though, I mean, it humanizes all these characters to the point of being flawed. I mean, the point where Superman is shown as being a very flawed person, and that black
Boy
and
Scout,
white.
he is not.
Yeah, black and white maybe doesn't actually exist. The way these characters want to see things is so binary. The black and white maybe doesn't actually exist. They gotta turn a blind eye sometimes and let things happen that they're not willing to do, but other people are.
Or a blind ear.
Or a blind ear. Wow, man, really? Really?
I did it on purpose.
Yeah, but to me it's a spoiler. But anyway.
It doesn't matter. They don't know. Read it and you'll find out.
Yeah, but again, this is one of those books that's highly controversial amongst the comic community.
They referred the reason why a lot of people hate on this book too is they also reference it as the girl in the fridge type kind of scenario where it's like the girl is the victim because she's the one
but if you also think about the way this book plays out, you know.
Oh, right. Right. I don't understand why these people complain about. Yeah.
It dispels the entire thing.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to hear a more in-depth review to Identity Crisis, I keep it spoiler free. You can check out the video I uploaded a couple years ago. But absolutely, Identity Crisis is definitely one of the best things that DC has to offer. If you ask me, apparently if you ask Josh, Dallas, I don't know if you've read Identity Crisis.
You got some reading to do.
You have a lot of reading to do. But it's an absolutely incredible book, and it's a very moving, incredible book. And
I cried.
I gotta say that very last panel, it is heart wrenching for me. It is forever seared into my brain.
And also, I mean, it got me liking Elongated Man, and I always thought like Elongated Man was the cheesiest superhero ever, and I'm just like, from the very first issue, you're just like, oh shit.
Yeah, and I gotta say, man, like the love you can feel between Sue Dibney and the Elongated Man.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Relationship goals.
So well done. I mean, when we did our top 5 rated comic book couples, if we got a little bit more out of them in other issues and other series and stuff, they would be right up
I think
there.
if I remember correctly, I put him as my honorable mention. Or I actually did put
They
him
might
on
have
the list.
been.
That's a previous podcast if you want to go back and check that out.
Yeah, because I can't remember. I think I did mention them in there.
But yeah, great book. Not a bad #1 at all. Maybe not as good as my Flintstones as far as being underrated, but Identity Crisis is a great book.
I think the thing with comic books that people don't realize is there's so many of them. If you don't like what's going on, you don't have to pick it up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
the thing is, too, there's so
of,
many, it's inevitable things are going to be underrated.
Right.
And I think our definitions of underrated slightly differ.
vary.
For me,
Yeah.
when you talk about something that's underrated, it's something that people don't really know about, they don't really talk about, they've never read. To you, it's something that you don't think people have read it, they know about it, but they don't hold it in as high of regard.
I mean, I think it's a variation of both, but yeah, I do think that's one thing I definitely take in consideration is if somebody has seen it or read it and they don't give it the good enough rating that it deserves. Like they kind of go, oh yeah, it was okay, and it's like, no, that was fantastic. You're just being fucking stupid. Yeah.
But all right, guys, do you have anything left to say before we head out of here?
Well, can I talk more about penises?
No. Dallas, anything?
Nope, I am good.
All right, guys. Well, we really hope that you enjoyed our top 5 underrated comic book arcs. I hope that they're arting now.
They're already
They're arting.
But we really hope that this actually
Twin
trudged
Peaks.
up a little bit of
this whole umbrella of a statement.
a little bit of interest and intrigue on your part. That maybe if you haven't read some of these, if you thought that our analysis or our summarization of these books, piqued some interest in you, definitely go check these books out. Or if you guys are in the area, definitely come ask us about it. We can give you some recommendations on these, or help you navigate what you should probably read out of these things. But anyway, we really hope that you liked it, and we really hope that you guys, decided to pick up some of these books. And we will see you guys next week for this week's poll. Take care.